Hey everybody, welcome to the Anthony and Todd Show. My name is Trevor.
I'm Vincent.
And today we're going to be taking a look at our year-end list for the best albums of 2018.
We went through two parts of the best songs. Now in one video we'll list off the top 50 albums.
51 albums.
Not 51, but projects. That means albums, mixtapes, and EPs, and et cetera.
Movies, video games, songs,
books,
art pieces, days of the year.
Ooh.
Top 51 days of 2018.
Number one, day one.
November 27th. Nothing actually happened on that.
Without any further ado, we've talked so much this year. We talked so much last year. We have to get 2018 over with. I just want to get 2018 over with, even though we're in 2019 and we should be over. Everyone's already in the future. We're in the past still for some reason. We need to catch up. So let's get right to it.
All right, number 51, we have Vince Staples.
Yeah, Vince Staples is very consistent, hard to the point, over a lot of production that's backed by the fantastic Kenny Beats, that also has mastered this very cut to the point trap persona. Vince on this is using the narrative of a radio station, the various songs that play on it, and the atmosphere that plays on Big Boy's Neighborhood, and he's just provides this very short, sweet, to the point project.
Mm-hmm. Number 50, we got Young Fathers with Cocoa Sugar.
Young Fathers takes their alternative R&B stylings and adds a little bit of pop appeal to it by still putting on some of their weirdest hooks to date. Tracks like Holy Ghost, where he says, you can keep your deity, I'm all right. I'll be in my bed like Jesus Christ, or something like that. Oh, raised from the dead like Jesus Christ. Just some of their most strange lyrics and moments yet, but actually having a more refined and pulled back electronic production that is on it. More simplified, I mean.
Number 49, we've got Deluxe with more disco songs about love. I talked about this a little bit in the songs. Deluxe, as we've said so many times throughout the year, are perfecting a dead art form, something that's not even being studied, not even held for that much worth. And Deluxe is the only ones in this vacuum that are still creating and perfecting their sound of disco music. And it comes out some really catchy and fun and pop-heavy results without changing the formula of disco.
This thing is ridiculously unforgettable. Tracks, and especially the high-pitched vocals that come off of this, will be stuck in your head for days.
Number 48, we got Mitski, Be the Cowboy.
Yeah, Mitski discusses a lot of different themes and cool narrative concepts in kind of a year that's been the revival of the singer-songwriter to get an album like this, especially on this album where Mitski actually proves her self-worth to me. Before this, I never really understood her kind of persona, because it's always been these very climactic tracks, but they've always been kind of grungy and almost lo-fi, wherein this is very more smoothed out. It goes to these various different places of sound. Some tracks are more rock heavy, some tracks are almost like karaoke like, some tracks feel like she's just on a stage crying by herself in this almost lost place. She covers a lot of different interesting concepts, for whether the idea of her kind of creating this imaginary husband and then comparing herself to the plethora of songwriters that came before, or whether she's talking about just being isolated from the world and craving human affection in some form or another. I just think she covers a lot of interesting ideas on this.
Sure. Number 47, we got Open Mike Eagle's EP, What Happens When I Try to Relax.
Open Mike Eagle tries to relax, but ends up
making a 7-track EP anyway.
Yeah, he essentially on this is just showcasing that even though he is flexing in the art game right now, and he's huge in the indie hip-hop scene, or at least decently comparable in the indie hip-hop scene, he's still a down-to-earth person in how he tries to just be a regular person. And there's a different style and different tone to the flexing that is on this.
It's like he doesn't want people to see him as this rapper you can't touch, or exhibit that you can't get too near to. He's just like a normal person. You can see him out at the store or in a bar. You can see him out anywhere and talk to him like a normal person.
Yeah, and also on track Side Eagle, especially where he actually acts like a normal person and says he saw Vince Staples and Kendrick Lamar in the club and didn't say shit. He didn't even go up to him.
At number 46, we got Kali Uchis with Isolation.
Kali Uchis makes her nonchalant pop and R&B work really well by adding a bunch of different flavors, whether it be some more sultry jazz or kind of
Latin flair,
which is really nice. A bunch of different styles presented on this. A bunch of very bold places for Kali Uchis to go that she hasn't gone before.
Number 45, we got Anna Burch with Quit the Curse. This was a fun little acoustic romp. Anna Burch is a new artist on the scene. I think she's really carving like a niche for herself, almost in the vein of like Mitski, but it feels like very just honest with really excellent songwriting by Anna.
Anna Burch just seems very honest and well spoken for her on this. Especially tracks like Belle Isles, where she's talking about this almost like sunburnt love as this broken summer love's coming to an end. She's left sunburned, and it just seems like the song takes place in this like grimy, sand-ridden beach dive bar.
Yeah.
It has this like lo-fi thickness to it, or musk to it. Then we get other moments where she's kind of reflecting on kind of making a statement and being just so rambunctious she needs to cause a scene because no one's paying attention to her. She just feels like she's going to snap and lose it. She's very introspective, but also at the same time very able to create these cool narrative spaces in this very almost throwback to 60s styles pop space.
Yeah. Number 44, we've got Ghost with Prequelle, perhaps the only metal album I liked this year.
Yeah, it's either this or the Zeal or another one. But Ghost provides just a throwback to when metal was just super catchy. And it wasn't really about the shredding, it was more about the performances given.
Yeah, these are extremely catchy songs written with like this medieval Black Plague kind of vibe going on. Almost like you were transported back to like the world building of like it reminds me a lot of like the world building of King Gizzard.
Yeah.
And the way that they like build these like medieval kingdoms kind of in their songs. But Prequelle takes place all completely like within a medieval kingdom, down to the instrumentation and the way that the songs are performed with like harpsichords mixed right in with saxophones and electric guitars and synths. The whole record being about that like anti-religious aspect if it lived within that time period.
And also the Black Death and how the devil is trying to use it to create sin, and it's just completely crazy.
It's bizarre.
The narrative I want out of my metal.
Yes.
Just something kind of campy and weird, over-exaggerative.
It's like very like dark and gloomy, but without being like gruesome.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. It was a very big surprise for me. Number 43, we got IGLOOGHOST with their dual IP Clear Tamei and Steel Mogu.
Yeah, this is essentially IGLOOGHOST continues to create some of the most eccentric electronic music I've ever heard. But on this, the narrative actually took a lot more center space with me, talking about the two sides of this dual world that's happening in between time and space, and it's really weird. It's very convoluted, and you wouldn't know it unless you read it. But for me, actually, just reading the simple narrative or the short summary actually gave me a lot of soundscapes.
Yeah, it made a lot more sense.
So for this one, I actually recommend going to the Bandcamp page and reading just a short little description about what the summary is, because it gives you these ideas of this almost like intergalactic battle that's taking place in between time. I think it's really nice.
Yeah. Number 42, we got Sons of Kemet with Your Queen is a Reptile.
Sons of Kemet have fantastic band chemistry and also instrumentation choice. The fact that this thing contains two drummers, it's a quartet by the way, two drummers, Shabaka Hutchins, which is the front man who plays saxophone and also clarinet, and also a tuba.
Not usually used in jazz.
Which is just so strange because it's so weird. The percussion builds off each other to this giant climactic pyramid. You get these wailing tuba that just like sounds, it just builds the intensity and the thickness of this energy, and then the saxophone, and it's almost equal to the intensity given. The fact that it's able to almost manage to meet that intensity, I think, is strange. And the fact that everyone builds off of each other. The best way to describe the way this album sounds is if you view Sons of Kemet as like one person stacked on each other's shoulders as they like very intensely walk to you by staring at you like this. Just very intense aggressiveness sorts, but chaotic and weird and strange and lovable.
Number 41, we got Playboy Cardi's Die Lit.
Yeah, this thing is just the future trends of mumble rap and how it is going to be even more absurd and even more spaced out. I think the cliche thing to say is on drugs or you're drunk or something like that. But I think it's more, as Trevor said in our review, the loss of that control, how you're just lost and you don't have control of your actions. Another way to put it is strobe light, to the point where you kind of are just blinded what Cardi does, and it's more about the performance than actually the lyricism that's being presented. And
next thing you know, there's Dave Grohl when you're doing backflips off the stage.
Yeah, it's just really hype, over energetic, just nonsense that is completely fun.
Number 40, we've got Against All Logic's 2012 through 2017. Basically all the works of Nicholas Jar compiled across the last like 5 years or so. This is an electronic masterpiece, an electronic just playground, I feel like.
Yeah.
There's hints of Plunderphonics, there's hints of just waves of sound with blaring horn sections and booming basses and extremely catchy like electronic melodies and sampling. Not sampling. Sampling.
Sampling is when you get Sampa the sample.
Yes. Just some really poignant points of sampling here. I just find this work to be a real gem of everything that he's been creating. If it took him 5 years to come up with like 10 or 11 tracks that he liked enough to put in an album, that is really saying something. I feel like
it's the most hypnotic release. Like, you listen to this and you just get kind of lost in this space, in this world. It's the best album to clean your house to this year, because you just kind of forget what you're doing and you're more focused on the music and the melody than anything else.
Number 39, we got Post Malone with Beer Bongs and Bentleys. This is how I wish every artist was. When they promise things, they put out, and Post has worked diligently, evidently, since his last release, Stony, to actually deliver to his fans the kind of music that they wanted to hear. He's not stagnant in his art form. He didn't just say, my fans like this, so I'm going to make this for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
He decided to get better at singing, get better at guitar, get better at production, get better at rapping, and actually create a really compelling piece of music here, but still within like the emo rap or pop trap kind of feel, working that
somewhere between a Juice WRLD and a Justin Bieber.
Yes.
But yeah, this thing is just very consistent, but it also has the strange oddities that I think Post has really shown in its actual look, like its actual embodiment of having just long hair and like nasty, ratty kind of look of sorts, but also in his interviews where he just seems like a really charming and nice individual.
He's surprisingly relatable too.
Yeah, it's the quirkiness. There's still elements of quirkiness and oddities to this super sweet tooth pop album.
Number 38, we've got Antarctica Vespucci, Love in the Time of Email.
Yeah, Chris Farron and Jeff Rosenstock managed to come together and essentially embody the energy of what made like 90s pop punk and 90s alternative rock and 90s third generation or third wave ska so much fun. There isn't that like production or anything like that. It just has that similar energy, and I think that comes through a lot of Chris Farron and Jeff Rosenstock's performances and passion as they talk about a bunch of different subjects in modern day love and also modern day self-love, and you get these really intimate moments where Chris Farron's just really sure about himself and his future. I just think it's a really cool duo that managed to bring a lot of quirk to rock in an age where people are afraid to add quirk to rock.
Number 37, we got J.I.D, DiCaprio 2. In short, this is what the natural progression from J.I.D's first record, The Never Story, should have been. He improves on everything that he could have possibly, on his production, on his rapping. His features only boost him up.
Yeah.
I mean, J.I.D is just making some incredible progress.
He shows that he's just one of the hardest hitting MCs in the game. He's just one of the most technical driven and fast paced MCs in the game.
At number 36, we got White Denim's Performance, one of my personal solo reviews of the year. White Denim's been a really, really interesting band to me with some crazy time signatures that they use, some really excellent songwriting and riff writing, creating like some of the catchiest rock songs I've heard in years. Started back up with Stiff in 2016, just going back to the roots, and Performance just continues on with that. They've got some really fun, catchy rock songs in here that just truly serves as a reminder that rock is not dead. I love their southern rock influences. Reminds me a lot of like Leonard Skinner if they just shred it even harder than they do. This Austin-based band is one of my favorites to watch. At number 35, we got Charles Bradley with Black Velvet.
Yeah, Charles Bradley died in 2017 due to stomach cancer, and the Mean and Street band and producer, it's not coming to my name right now, managed to put out this tribute posthumous record on Daptones and treats it with a lot of respect. These are all B-sides, either covers, or there's actually there's a remix and an instrumental just by the Mean Street Band, recorded during Charles's studio sessions for the last 3 albums he made. And not are they just B-sides, like these aren't just like thrown together tracks. This is an assembly of a narrative. This is an assembly of an album. This feels like similar to Charles Bradley's last studio album, Changes, but I think it's even better because I think the performances and the risks that are taking on this, especially with the covers given and how just strange little narrative oddities that are placed on this are presented. The fact that you get this inflection in the middle where the Mean Street Band essentially tributes Charles Bradley with this instrumental score that seems mournful. It seems like a video reel that you would play at like an award show when someone's playing tribute to something, or when someone's inducted into a Hall of Fame of sorts. Just very mournful, respectful, and just it's missing that element. It feels empty. And the impactful remix that you go out is just fantastic note for Charles's career. Someone who started out really late and didn't get the chance to shine until later in his life, but finally being played tribute to as the Screaming Eagle stole. I love that nickname so much. It's great. But yeah, I love this record. I think Charles was commended so much, and it's very tasteful and very tasteful and well laid out.
Number 34, we've got Czarface and MF Doom with Czarface meets Metalface. Oh, hi, MF Will.
Hey, this album's good. That's that bit. But MF Doom has been stagnant for a long while, and Czarface kind of brings him back to his intensity because it's similar in tone to what MF Doom is usually over, and similar in era too, because you got Inspector Deck, 7L and Esoteric, older artists, especially Inspector Deck of Wu-Tang.
Yeah, that means ancient.
But it means that like they're from similar eras, and they also
click well. They click really well. Their stylistic choices being like the supervillain, superhero, comic booky kind of feel to it. The Saturday morning, like Batman the Animated Series or X-Men kind of feel to it. Just plays really well into both of their strengths. They knew exactly like what they wanted to do with Doom, and Doom delivers over some really incredible production. This was a true match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Number 33, we got the Voids with Virtue.
Yeah, Voids just pushed the boundaries even further they did on the last record, but also add elements that made the Strokes popular, like that pop sensibility to alternative rock, creating this weird mix of modi emotional alternative rock and just experimental neo-psychedelia. This weird blend of Julius Casablancas just going through these weird phases. Sometimes he's recreating folk songs. Sometimes he's over these like thumping drums that have no place. And sometimes the way, like, this thing just feels compressed at times, like it's just shrunk down. Other times it's very wide and open. It's just all over the place. It's one of the most experimental rock albums of the year, and one of the albums that showcase that rock wasn't dead in 2018.
Number 32, we've got Screaming Females All at Once. Speaking of rock not being dead, not only is rock not dead, female-led rock and female-driven rock is not dead.
No, not just that. Chemistry in rock is dead. Seeing Screaming Females live, Jesus Christ, they can fucking perform. And it wasn't just like, most of their set was just them fucking wailing on instruments. Their chemistry is unlike any other. The way they all build on each other and the way their performances, it may not be one of my favorite rock albums of the year, because we'll talk about a couple later, but it's like comparing like an orchestra to like Kanye. Of course, I like Kanye better, but the orchestra also has its own merit. It's very catchy, but also fantastically performed and well-crafted rock album. Chemistry is unlike any other, and they just feel like one cohesive unit. Like they're all at once is like the title. They're all just wailing at once on their instruments.
Number 31, we've got 21 Pilots with Trench. It feels good to be able to unashamedly like 21 Pilots.
They matured a lot with their sound, and I think not only does Tyler perform with his lyricism, but even though he does give off a lot of these pretentious statements that don't even pretentious lyrics that don't have any weight to them at all. You do get this heavy narrative of this world that Tyler's building and how he's trying to escape from the city and he can't because these 9 prophets are trying to hold him down.
Yeah, the bishops.
The Niners. During which 21 Pilots either go a more rock route or a more emo route. It reminds me a lot of like My Chemical Romance with the Brock Parade at times, but also with more pop sensibilities at moments where Tyler's rapping, and you can actually see that Tyler's actually improved on his flow wise. But not even that, Josh Dunn is one of the most unspoken heroes.
Oh yeah, he's got some incredible drum work on this record.
His performances sometimes are just crazy how he's able to just make a backing. He's able to get so much charisma of himself on the track, even though he's just doing percussion.
Yes.
I think that's incredible.
Number 30, we've got Jeff Rosenstock's Post. I actually really enjoyed this album. After I didn't really care for Worry back in 2016. I thought there were some really great shining moments and great singles on there. But overall, I didn't like the overall feel of the record.
Yeah.
But Post reminds, like, it's just... I feel like he's more honest with himself. After this was made after the election of 2016, the presidential election of 2016.
So it's post-presidential election.
Yeah, and how Jeff Rosenstock feels about it and how he feels about like the country in its current state. I mean, there are senses of like some serious hopelessness, some senses of real worry about the country.
But mostly like dread.
Yeah, the dread about what's going to happen. But at the end, he finally comes through with this message of, while it is like very sad, it's still a message of hope where he's like, we can't let them win. We can't just give up and let them have everything that they've ever wanted because we have to continue fighting. I think like overall for a very like hopeless album, that glimmer of hope shines through and just shows like, I think it's a real beacon for the nation right now.
This is Jeff Rosenstock's slowest record, and I don't think it is his most passionate record.
No.
And it's not his best, but I think on this record, he's delivering his most consistent narrative throughout and his most consistent showcase of like a singular emotion throughout, while still delivering a excess of passion like he always does in performance, which he's great at.
Number 29, we've got Tropical Fuckstorm, Laughing Death in Meat Space.
Yeah, Tropical Fuckstorm is a Australian supergroup, so that's why Trevor didn't do
I might.
That's why Trevor didn't do his review of that with me, because he hates Australia.
I gave it a 0.
But yeah, this is just a absurd dystopia. That's the best way to describe it. It's just a huge world. Everything on this is blown up. The natural... It's not too off from our world, but if you turned up our world to 11. Essentially, this is a fantastically produced post-punk album, but it just is able to get to these absurds where I feel like a lot of other acts aren't able to get to. It pokes a lot of fun at the absurd side of our current place in the world in a way that people aren't able to. You think with like a president like Donald Trump who's hosted The Apprentice and who's friends with Kanye West, you would get more people who would like actually like, yeah, this is what's happening. But like Tropical Fuckstorm does it in a way where it's just like very theatrical. Like I feel like I'm watching Brazil or like a Clockwork Orange. That's why I always say it's like a dystopia, because it just gives me that feel of just, it's unnatural. It's super saturated and turned up to 11, but it's not far off of where we can be. It's almost like a precautionary tale. And that's why I enjoy so much about it.
Number 28, we have Earl Sweatshirt with Some Rap Songs. Honestly, making one of the most timely comebacks in his career. As we talked about for the songs, with Earl Sweatshirt's Nowhere to Go being in our top songs, something you said that really stuck with me is that so many people feel like Earl Sweatshirt is like a great king of lyrics and an amazing rapper and one of the best rappers to ever live, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of these people that have listened to Earl only like heard him in his Odd Future days and really hasn't like heard anything from him in such a long time. Not a lot of people listen to I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside. Doris was critically acclaimed, but that was multiple years ago. I feel like Earl is wrestling with himself and like wrestling with this fame that he's found himself in, where he doesn't feel like he's like done a lot for the community and feels like he hasn't done a lot for like his fans. And being gone for so long.
While also dealing with his depression and grief after his father's death. Mm-hmm. He's just lost in this void. And I think it's perfect for him to become more abstract than ever in this time period of being lost, because I think it's very able to create these self-reflexive moments of not only depression, but beauty. Mm. Moments like, I think it's Azar, and the part where I think it's maybe called Combining the Seam. I can't remember what it's called. The track where he reunites his father with his mother. Dad, yeah. It's fantastic. You get instances of beauty and like you're able to feel some type of like good motion, but then it's like straight back to the void of depression. Mm-hmm. And he's able to explicit so much emotion on this album. I think it's fantastic.
Number 27, we've got Arm & Hammer with Paraffin.
Yeah, I like this more now. I like this album. I'm full on board with this. At first, I gave this like an okay to good. I gave it a positive review, but I just didn't feel like a lot of elements added up for me. I still think this thing has its problems, but listening to it now, it's a lot more seamless than I thought. Mm-hmm. And it's not as much as an effort. At the time, I thought it was like one of the hardest things I had to listen to all year. In a year where I felt like we listened to harder things than this.
Listen to a lot of real bad stuff.
Either not real bad, but like kind of technically challenging, like Kamasi with its length, but also like things like West Side Gun, where it's like a really slow burner, or things later on like Lonnie Holly, where it's just this like long dreading void. I thought it was almost like too abstract for me at times, but listening to it now, and something I appreciated at the time in the review, this album is trying to push hip hop as far as it can go, and that comes in a lot of production. What's you get the very fantastic jazz samples that are super smooth, but then you also get these like completely abstract samples that don't make any sense. You get Frank Ocean sampled at the end, but it doesn't understand like the purpose of why he's there. And there's just so many elements to it that just are weird. Elusive's hitting these fiery lines after line after line. Billy Woods is just going on these weird tangents, this long stream of consciousness that doesn't end up going anywhere. It's fantastic. Just the ideas that are presented on this and this long like dredge of different production styles, I think is good.
26, we've got Lonnie Holly with Myth.
Yeah, Lonnie Holly uses the void in the way the void needs to be. People want to just create these like huge reverb like space, huge wet kind of reflective spaces, because I think it makes my sadness feel good. Lonnie Holly on this is just like, yeah, this is the void's a place. It's a place you can actually go to, and I will perform there. And he provides this very he creates this very improvisational album there. Sometimes it's very nostalgic and almost retro, and very nostalgic and almost mourning for tracks like "Come Back to Me," where he's just literally playing on keys, and it just seems like super, almost like 40s just folk song or something like that, almost like off the beaten path type deal, where it's like very folky.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think.
He makes folk art. It feels like his folk art has extended from the physical realm and like into the audio realm, like in the music that he makes.
But then you also get these very like large, very experimental waves that are being blasted on you, like moments like "I Woke Up in a Fuck Up America," but you get these long, fantastically crafted narrative moments like "I Snuck Off the Slave Ship." This is a long dredge that has so many pieces to it, and it's fantastic. Comparing the beginning, where it's this huge, long atmospheric space where Lonnie's just kind of singing with jazz accompaniment, to the offbeat and abstract production that's on in the middle, and then you get to this end where Lonnie Holly just wants to dance, and it's very fun and playful and just natural.
Yeah.
Just so many switches and places that this album takes to, even though it's all very long and overspoken for and improvised. I just think it works out really well.
Number 25, we got Flatbush Zombies with Vacation in Hell. In my opinion, this is how post-trap or even just trap in and of itself should sound.
I don't know if you can qualify as post-trap, but it's close enough. I think I would classify it as like almost like psychedelic hip-hop in a sense. Very hardcore hip-hop.
I would say like psychedelic trap almost.
Psychedelic hardcore hip-hop. Psychedelic East Coast hip-hop. I don't know what to classify, but
it's like... It's trap flavored at least. And it almost feels like Dante's Inferno told from the perspective of completely like whacked out rappers.
I don't like viewing it in the context. I like viewing it in the context as this clapback of an era where we're in these like hour and 30 long dredges, and Flatbush Zombies makes this hour and like 15-minute wrong record that is completely enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Like,
to me, it feels like... See, I'm thinking like Dante's Inferno because it feels like we start like at the top, Ring of Hell, and it's like whatever. And then we start like going into our vacation, and then I need a vacation, and then Zombie Gang 3 times, and then like we're just going down, and then we get to like the Courtney Love conspiracy and how they're lonely, and then we're talking about like abuse and things like that.
Yeah, then you also get like Misunderstood, and then You Are My Sunshine, where Michi Darko's talking about essentially just mourning on the track for A$AP Yams, and actually the best track that's actually kind of covered that, at least A$AP Yams' death, because there's been tracks that I really enjoyed that I've talked at like the Ever Getting High, but this is the one that's like
it feels like it's kind of just like dancing around it, but this is like somebody's actual like emotions are affected by the death of a legendary member.
Yeah, like the Lamborghini High is more of like death is just another phase. Let's move past that because
for the sake of like moving on with our own lives.
Whereas this is more, I'm still stuck in this. I need to get out of it. So the only way I can do it is through making music.
It just like this. I feel like it just descends into more and more serious undertones when it first started out, and they're talking about like shrimp and going on a vacation
with Joey Badass,
doing dumb shit, and then like we just descend into like more serious subjects. And I think Flatbush made a really enjoyable record out of something that was so long.
Not to mention they have fantastic collaborators throughout this entire thing, whether it's A$AP 12y, Denzel Curry, Portugal the Man of all people. Yeah, it's just surprising who they actually kind of get on this throughout, and it just works out so well. This is a fantastically paced record. For something being so long, you really don't feel the length because the tracks later on are even more entertaining and even more wholehearted than the ones that started off with, because Big Shrimp isn't a wholehearted track. You have to get the small shrimp, the ones that really matter.
At 24, we've got Petite Noir with La Maison Noire, or The Black House.
Petite Noir creates this very energetic mini album / EP that is essentially all about remembering who you are, and things like Inner Fire, and how these like very sensitive political topics like blowing up the Congo, you kind of have to be aware of who you are and never forget it. You got to discover who you are and the characteristics that make you you, and never let anyone take them from you. It's all part of this a wave that Petite Noir calls a noir wave. And basically the characteristics of noir wave are essentially what I just described.
Yeah.
How you
surrounding yourself with those people that have the same characteristics or that only build up your characteristics. But the whole album has this like very like you mentioned, like Congo, African flair. It also reminds me very heavily of Heart of Darkness, like the Joseph Conrad book. It's incredibly catchy and like dance hall inspired, but without like Drake like dance hall inspired. This is like going straight to the root of dance hall and being like, this is the type of music that we're making.
Yeah,
just a good fun record, but with also touching on some really heavily political and important subjects
while still being super energetic.
Yeah. Number 23, we've got Hermit and the Recluse, Orpheus versus the Sirens, and this is one of the best world building albums. Andy
Moss provides this very epic, conquestic. I think that should be a word. I don't think it is.
This is very reminiscent of Greek tragedy and Greek Obviously Greek dramas, and poetry, epic poetry, like Homer's Iliad and Homer's Odyssey, the story of Jason and the Argonauts. Like, this is very much so rooted in Greek mythology, and it touches upon all sorts of different subjects.
But the production is very breathless and dreamy, while Ka over top of it talks about how almost modern day New York and his modern day lifestyle.
Yeah, and how it compares to like
almost like in a Percy Watson kind of deal where it's or not Percy Watson.
Percy Jackson.
Percy Watson's a wrestler in a wrestling cover. Almost in a Percy Jackson kind of way where the gods never left.
Yeah, he's like comparing himself to like a Greek hero, or he's comparing himself to Orpheus, the Greek figure who could make music so beautiful he could make animals dance and trees weep.
And he can calm the sirens.
Yes.
And it's incredible how he applies things like fate, which is a heavy thing covered in Greek mythology, and more implied to things like luck today, actually makes it a really interesting idea. People have covered fate before, but not like this. I think adding that Greek element to it, that Greek mythology element to it, makes it so much more.
Yeah, it comes full circle. Almost. It's very interesting. Number 22, we've got West Side Gun with Supreme Clientele.
West Side Gun, the best way to explain this, West Side Gun is a New York rapper whose throwbacks a lot to 90s East Coast hip hop, but even past that to like acts like, even like spacier acts around the 90s, early 2000s scene, like Outkast, especially like the 18 Aliens era. Not like vocally, because he's very similar to like Ghostface Killah, very nasally and raspy of sorts, but he's over this like dream, almost like surreal production throughout. It's not like the super most innovative production ever, but for this, in this like context, it creates this like lucid dream, or almost like this like lucid nightmare where West Side Gun is essentially in this just like he's just talking about crime in New York and the things he had to do, whether it's selling drugs, like on tracks like Dean Malenko, where he says he can like sell 2 bricks and make it into 5. Not only in that, this is also called Chris Benoit, also called God is the Greatest, and it deals with the themes of Chris Benoit and kind of the attributes of Chris Benoit, who Chris Benoit is a wrestler who was beloved until he due to a number of reasons, some say mental health, some say steroids, killed his son, killed his wife and killed his son in this, what's proclaimed as raid rage, and then killed himself. Chris Benoit was beloved by his fans, and he was perceived to be a family guy. Everyone that was around him said he was lovable and he loved the people who he was around. But his character on stage was menacing. It just so happened to be his character at the end of his life was that. It was brutal, savage. It was someone who jumps off the top rope and headbutts. And West Side Gun personifies that. He is someone who can come off as wholesome and sweet, like tracks like WrestleMania 20. He can have these fun, wacky hooks and ad-libs like do. Also, the ad-libs on this are fantastic, by the way. Some of the best ad-libs in like the last 10 years. He's able to be appealing, but there's this darkness in him, whether it's the themes he's covering, whether it's just the surreal atmosphere he's placed in. It just, nothing adds up. It all feels off, and it's the offness that just brings the intensity to West Side Gun. And whether it's the fantastic features that are provided this, like Busta Rhymes, who becomes the raspiest person of all time on this, Anderson .Paak, who's so soulful and delightful on this, or even people like he's usually worked with, like Benny and Conway appear on this and just even back up that atmosphere fully in this like new wave of East Coast hip-hop, East Coast hardcore hip-hop. Just fantastic.
Number 21, we have Denzel Curry with Taboo. This is, I think, Denzel Curry's magnum opus so far.
So far, yeah.
This I think might break the spell that he's only known as the Ultimate guy, or the guy who did Ultimate. Denzel Curry just, again, like I was talking about with Flatbush, just descends more and more into this darker, grimier place, almost under the guise of like a carnival kind of thing. Yeah. As the album goes on, and just gets into more and more like disturbing topics. We touch upon Clout Cobain in our top songs. I mean, he has like really goofy moments like Sumo.
But he also has moments like Perks where he's
Yes.
critiquing not only drugs and how they're presented in the rap game, but the people in it. You have moments like Vengeance with Zillikami and JPEGMAFIA, this brash posse cut. You get moments like Sirens with J.I.D, which is almost like a protective calm before the storm moment. You get the opening to this album where Denzel Curry talks about sexual abuse and how it's affecting how it's affecting someone he knows. You get a conscious album that's kind of all over the place with its subject matter, but it also manages to be super punchy and super intense. And it can be goofy at certain points, but it's the charm that it can be goofy at certain points.
Number 20, we've got Kamasi Washington's Heaven and Earth, one of the most grandiose jazz albums, or most grandiose albums of the entire year. It feels like I compared it once to that Disneyland ride Soarin', where you feel like you can just see the entire landscape, all of heaven and all of earth at one time, with Kamasi's incredible musicianship in the background, just displaying all of this and conjuring up images of all of these things solely through his jazz instrumental music.
Yeah, you get moments like Street Fighter Moss where he literally puts a song of his in the Street Fighter universe, like it's actually in that world. You get moments like Connections, which just seems like it just appeals to be like a Disney track, like you're frolicking through the woods. You get moments like Hub Tones, which provide this like almost rebelling and rebooth, how after the storm everything will be fine until another storm comes. So like it's just dealing with and of course, who can forget the Space Traveler's Lullaby that's very isolate and almost overwhelmed by its surroundings. So like Kamasi Washington takes the epic and works with more either narrative themes or more risks throughout, or little catches like moments like Street Fighter Moss or the Space Traveler's Lullaby.
Number 19, we have Caro Caro Bonito's Time and Place. This is Caro Caro Bonito's first record on the Polyvinyl label, and I feel like they are breaking out a lot of like what they had been doing with a lot of like I said, like very like plastic.
It's not cutesy anymore.
No.
It's cutesy with a darkness. It's like a stuffed animal that's full of rodents.
Yes.
It's just like it appears to be cutesy, but there's a lot more that's going on. Whether it's tracks like Only Acting, where Sarah's talking about how she gets so stuck in a role, it's just like she can't differ what's the role from reality and what her reality is. You get moments where she's talking about the basically physical layout of the universe and how reality is a thing. You get moments where she's going through the dumps, scourging through all these things, and how one person's trash is another person's Trevor, and how everything's thrown away at one point. A very wholesome track later on, with sometimes where you talk about how at some point you get overwhelmed and there's nothing you can really do about it except for adapt. There's so many of these narrative threads that appeal to be these like cheesy, almost like J-pop like tracks, but they're not. They actually have this darkness, lyricism to it. It's not as squeaky clean as you think. There's this lingering darkness to it, and there's fantastic rock, J-pop, and electronic production all thrown across this thing. It's fantastic.
All right. Number 18, we got Blood Orange with Negro, Swan, and I think really in short the best way to describe this is Blood Orange is sitting on a stage in the dark all by himself, making this very heartfelt, pour your soul out kind of music.
Yeah, Dev Hynes isn't a man of lyricism. Not to say the lyricism's bad on it. It's good, but it's not the important thing.
It's the performance.
It's the feeling that comes along with it. He's a man of feeling, and how he's able to put you to these landscapes that tug at your heartstrings and make you empathize with them is the most important thing about this record. I don't think I really want to describe this record this much. It's more things you have to experience on your own. It's more of a thing that you have to reflect. It's a very introspective record. It's better to self-reflect with. It's made for like those long night drives where you're just going down this like very dark road and you're just kind of thinking about life. It's made for those moments.
Number 17, we've got Anderson .Paak with Oxnard. I think this is just an incredibly well-made California fame in the moment at like right at the peak of your career kind of feeling, where he's talking about anything from getting tints on his car windows so people can't see him, to like showing up at any party that he wants with all the money in the world. Like, this is comparable to like Vince Staples' Prima Donna or Kanye's Graduation. This is a person in their moment of fame at the peak of their career making music about being famous.
Yeah, and he is able to come through with a fantastic personnel that just build up this aesthetic of West Coast or especially beachy, sunny days. People like Snoop Dogg, people like Dr. Dre, people like Q-Tip and J. Cole, who all fit this very like soulful atmosphere for this fantastic mix of so many different styles, whether it's soulful revival, you get some moments that are like trap and more contemporary hip-hop, you get more contemporary soul samples throughout this. Just such a mix of styles and production on this is fantastic.
Number 16, we have MGMT with Little Dark Age.
MGMT takes an 80s aesthetic, but doesn't just make it about the 80s aesthetic. They just make the catchiness of what has made MGMT always appealing, but applies it more to some harsher themes about mental illness, whether it's A Little Dark Age, where he's talking about depression almost as his Little Dark Age was a cutesy term to kind of explain it, but this track's very gothic in tone and also rich and saturated and neon-esque. You know, moments like When You Die, where you're talking about this character is contemplating suicide. It's also this very absurd tone where nothing really adds up and you're going through so many changes. It feels like you're traveling into the afterlife, and it's this very strange transition. You get at moments like She Works Too Out Too Much, where essentially this guy is addicted to this girl's online persona, and how the only reason their relationship didn't work out is because he didn't work out ever.
Yeah.
He's just addicted to the person that he saw on her profile. There's just so many themes and points that are brought up in this strange, absurd mess. MGMT is writing some of their best pop music to date, which I don't know how they're able to top Kids and Electric Feel, but they managed to come very close. They topped A Rock Your Spectacular as an album.
As an album?
Yeah.
They did not top Electric
This thing
Feel.
is...
They never will.
This thing is a throwback, but it isn't relying on a throwback. It just uses like, it's using it as influence, not as the artistry.
Right. Number 15, we have Tune Yards. I Can Feel You Creep Into My Private Life.
Meryl provides, in my terms, her best album to date. Listening to Who Kill and Nicki Knack, I think this is actually their most cohesive album to date. I don't think it's their most bold and brash, while at times like Look at Your Hands, I think it's actually their most annoying to date, where they are trying to be kind of off-putting and strange, but that's always been the appeal of Tune Yards. Tune Yards has always been annoying but fun, and it's the fact that these hooks are really ridiculous and get stuck in your head over and over again that make them appealing. But this, you get a lot of interesting subject matter, whereas tracks like Colonizer, where she's talking about
using her white woman's voice to speak out against injustices, but all in all, she's still part of the problem. Yeah. Really poignant moments from Meryl Garbus. In past albums, she's touched upon things like loyalty to your country, like over loyalty to your country in tracks like My Country, or just like the hell of living in like an underdeveloped country. But here I feel like it is even more like racially charged and self-aware than ever before. But it's still a great mix of like very self-aware tracks and really annoying, like just energetic tracks. Yeah,
it's eccentric pop music mixed with African polyrhythms.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted out of Tune Yards, and they provide their most political and most consistent. I think this thing has some of their best hooks to it to date. While not being their most absurd, I think it's some of their most addictive performances I've heard from them yet.
Number 14, we have Pusha T's Daytona.
Short, but punchy. Pusha T didn't need 30 minutes. Pusha T talks a lot about drug dealing.
As he always has.
As he always has, and that's always been a problem. But him and Kanye come through with 20 minutes of punchy material, and that's all you need from Pusha T. He's a fantastic rapper. He's a fantastic lyricist, fantastic performer. But on this, he actually does take more lyrical twists than I think lyrical and narrative twists than I think we give him credit. Moments like Infrared, where he's critiquing the modern rap scene, but most notably firing shots at Drake for using ghostwriters. You get moments like Santeria, where he's tributing his fallen friend. You get fantastic performances from Kanye West, who actually kind of tries to explain what he's been doing and kind of the language he's been using on the track What Would Meek Do, which is also very interesting because Pusha, on the intro of that, actually explains a lot of his philosophy of why he does and talks about the things he does and why he acts the way he does. This thing has fantastic soulful production, and it's also a bit jagged too. It's a bit abrasive. It's soulful, but it's still hardcore hip hop. And I think that's a good line to drop. It's short, it's punchy, it's intense, and that's all you need from Pusha T and Kanye.
At number 13, we have No Name with Room 25.
This is another one I don't want to talk about, similar to Blood Orange, because I think No Name on this...
She's rapping to individuals. She's not rapping to the masses. She's not rapping to her fans. She's rapping the things that she wants to rap about to individual people.
She's a really intimate artist, and her form of hip-hop, it's not meant to be played at parties. It's not meant to be played with groups. It's meant to be played by yourself. There's like one single on this, and I think that's Blaxploitation.
I think it was Ace.
I think Blaxploitation is more the harder hitting single. Even Ace, I think, is more.
That's the one she performs like everywhere.
Yeah, but I think that's more of even more of an intimate single. This is just No Name catching you up on how she's maturing as an artist, how she's maturing as a person, and where she is in life. And it's not as nostalgic as her previous record was, and that's it. I can't explain what more this album is about. You have to experience on your own, because it's like catching up with an old friend. Like I can't give you the highlights of what the conversation between me and Seymour was. Like it just happened.
Number 12, we have Angelique Kidjo, Remain in Light. And if that sounds familiar, it is because it is a cover of the entire Remain in Light album by Talking Heads. And the best way I can describe it is that Angelique Kidjo gives the polyrhythms of Remain in Light and the African inspiration and sampling from Remain in Light back to Africa.
Yeah, essentially just making it a full-on world music album. The reason we rated this so highly than a lot of other albums this year is because she takes not only a great record, but she makes it distinctively her own. And not just by making it a world music album. The production on this is just such a next level. How her chances to work with the lyricism, the hooks, and sometimes how she switches up to a more spoken word like track. Sometimes how she makes the hooks even more infectiously catchy than they were originally for before. It's hard to compare which one's better one, but you're not supposed to. You should just enjoy it. The fact that the production is just so fantastic on this thing, the drumming, whether it's you get these talking drums at moments, you get this fantastic woodwind at times. There's just a mix of instrumentation all throughout in this eccentric album that was made by David Byrne and Company in the early 70s, even made more eccentric now by Angelique Kidjo in 2018.
Number 11, we have Jack Stauber's HiLo, a uniquely internet artist.
Yeah, Jack Stauber makes lo-fi pop music. And it's supposed to be nostalgic in a sense, but I hate viewing it through that context, because I think it's more characteristic of what Jack Stauber, the personality Jack Stauber is. And he has the quirky and eccentric characteristics that are represented by lo-fi pop music. It is off, it is weird, it is eccentric, but that's just the type of personality Jack Stauber is. It's a little bit quiet, it's a little bit moany and yelpy, but it knows when to whisper and it knows when to scream almost at your most David Byrne-esque. It's a mix of fantastic synth work and strange lyricism that is just completely out of this world.
If I had to vouch for like one artist on this whole list for you to go listen to like immediately, it would be Jack Stauber, because he does not get the accreditation that he deserves. He does not get the recognition that he deserves. Number 10, we got Nostrum Grocers with their self-titled record, Nostrum Grocers.
Yeah, Milo and Elucid, both who have released projects before and after this year, during the year, make my favorite project from both of them this year. And by God, is this thing the most loud version of both of their personalities to date. Elucid is using his stream of consciousness. He's being more punchier than ever, while Milo is the most pretentious he has ever been, and I mean that in the most positive way. He's taking his philosopher persona and just making it completely like unavoidable.
It's like a caricature of a philosopher.
But it's
I think what's done best on this record is how they balance each other out, which can sometimes Milo can be a little much for me. Sometimes Elucid could be a little much for me. But the way that they balance each other out on this record, the perfect mix of this like dirty New York scene with the very pretentious, quiet flows by Milo, all on top of this really abstract and weird production. The way that they're just able to cancel out each other's negative traits to create a really introspective but abstract and weird record. I think it's a real feat.
It's just, this is supposed to be the back road of hip hop. It's just supposed to be the less common road, and they're trying to bend boundaries as much as they can, to the point where I think even like modern abstract hip hop listeners don't really enjoy this as much as they should, because I think this thing is more, the aesthetic of this thing is just, I don't give a fuck. That's essentially
it was meant to be a throwaway as well. The whole thing was meant to be a throwaway.
But the production is so smooth and I can only call it like incandescent, because it's like shining light on me. It's almost like lightning in a bottle of sorts. It's the duality of both Milo and Elucid. It's the lo-fi shadow-like world that comes through the production. I think everything just adds up, and the fact that this is just a constant stream of consciousness that's just delving after idea after idea after idea after absurd moment after absurd moment. Just a weird blending of two individuals. Elucid is a heavyweight boxer with a glass jaw, and Milo is a lightweight boxer with a mean right hook. And that's the best way you can explain the chemistry of this record. They even each other out.
Number 9, we got Parquet Quartz with Wide Awake.
The best spoken for rock album probably this year.
I would agree. It's all about woke culture and how ridiculous woke culture is across society. It also touches upon like a lot of other really political topics,
like Total Football.
Like Total Football,
where everyone else is supposed to play the role of other, also essentially just socialism or communism. But you get moments like where Parquet Quartz is reflecting on death, or reflecting on how violence is this constant cycle and you can't avoid it. All which is completely catchy. There's not an off hit on this album. It's completely traditional in a performance stance, but it's more about the ideas presented and how, I guess, well thought out and well chained together they are over the course of this entire project.
Number 8, we have Janelle Monae's Dirty Computer.
Janelle Monae is just a complete, genuine individual, and she provides us a very sex-filled look into kind of modern day society and the struggles she has to face, whether it be the struggles of her race, her sexuality, or her gender. And across this whole entire album, we're given fantastic pop music that represents that. We get fantastic features, whether it is like Brian Wilson or whether it's later on with like Pharrell Williams. Janelle Monae can both rap and sing on this thing. She provides some of the hardest hip-hop performances on this thing while providing some of the best pop ballads you heard all year. This thing could be theatric at times. It can be dark and punchy, like moments like Django Dane. It's just all over the place, but Janelle remains to be the same individual throughout all these performance changes and all these performance switches. I just think that's what makes her her constant show performance and her personality is why I think she's such a genuine individual.
At number 7, we got Quelle Chris and Jean Grae with Everything's Fine.
We talked about chemistry and duo a lot with this, but I think Jean Grae and Quelle Chris is the best example of that. Yeah. Because Quelle Chris is completely out in space while Jean Grae is like on
trying
Earth.
To anchor him back.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like Jean Grae is completely normal to her own right, because she's completely fiery and punchy as all get out. She comes through with some very slick and harsh bars, while Quelle provides these like unshapable lines throughout. Like it just doesn't make any sense a lot of times. It's that like looseness and that offbeat that you expect from Quelle Chris, that type of style. And I never saw their chemistry on a track before like I have on this album. Like moments like Prestige, like we saw on Quelly's last record, I didn't see the chemistry of these two, at least performance wise. But now with this entire album, I get this fantastic duality to this one act. We get a lot of look into kind of just modern day acceptance and how, are you fine? Yeah, everything's fine. And it kind of plays with that role, especially the amount of shakeups that are on here, at least with their skits and intermissions. You get people like Nick Offerman show up on here. You get people like Hannibal Buress, who actually has a verse on here. You get these fantastic narrative and almost film-like moments, almost like film-like and like audio drama-like moments on this record. Is a showcase of mundanity of the everyday life, but also at the same time how people try to deceive you into
believing that they're living a better life than they are.
And how you should just accept your life as it is.
Number 6, we have Kanye West's Ye, one of the most criminally underrated records of this year. I saw so many hip-hop lists, best of lists this year where Ye wasn't even included, and I think that in and of itself is really unfortunate. I think Kanye, seriously, like, I know he's been going through a lot of like weird stuff. Everybody's seen it.
But he's always gone through weird
he's
shit.
Always done like just weird.
And like,
weird
I'm not defending
stunts.
his opinions or anything like that, but he's always done weird shit. And I think on this record, he explains perfectly why he does the weird shit he does. Or not like the ideas or reasons behind it, but more his makeup.
Yeah, he's coming to terms with what he is and what he has been diagnosed with and who he is. And it, like we said for Ghost Town, it's just an incredibly freeing experience for me as a listener, but also I imagine this was incredibly cathartic for Kanye to make for himself.
Moments like Ghost Town where he's talking about being free from everything and how nothing will hurt him. But you also got moments like Violent Cries where he's talking about his daughter and how
he's afraid of the world.
He's fearing for herself. He wants her to be more a nerd than more like an athlete because people won't be attracted to her body as much. And he hopes she won't meet people like Kanye who are slick, and he's hoping she won't have to face struggles like most women will. And it's really interesting, and how he wishes she will have his body instead of Kim Kardashian's. I think that's one of the most important lines. But Kanye is just bleeding honesty through this. And you don't have to agree with the things he says, because I don't. But I believe I agree with the ideas he presents on this record, at least like just trying to become normal in a sense, and searching for that.
Being accepted, coming to terms with yourself. I don't know. I'm like I said for the Ghost Town thing, I feel weirdly proud of him for what he's doing here. Number 5, we got Everything Is Recorded by Richard Russell. By Everything Is Recorded. That's a weird thing to announce.
Richard Russell is the co-founder of XL Recordings, and on this he essentially creates a Gorillaz-like group, essentially like a super group of sorts, but it's not really, doesn't have any key members besides him. There's like a bunch of different features that recur a lot throughout this, like Sampha and Kamasi Washington's and eBay and
Wiki
and Infinite. But we get this very nice blend of alternative hip hop and R&B throughout. It's very synth heavy at times, but it's also very rigidly natural, like moments on Kane. It's very breathless throughout the entire thing as it recurs through these segments. It feels like it's always at a whisper at times, and it just feels, for something that just has ever-changing personnel, it feels like a cohesive unit, even though it isn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so spectacular. It's a very well laid out, structured album, which is a bunch of very dynamic personnel, none of which who should work together. Wiki, who's a New York rapper, should not be able to work with Kamasi Washington's, but it works perfectly. With Sampha and eBay on the same track, it shouldn't work, but it does. You have chords written by, you have synths performed by Damon Albarn on a track that has Kamasi Washington on sax. Like these two elements like contrast from each other, but they end up working in the end. You get the very fragile Sid with the very passionate Sampha, and they combine to create this lovely mix. You just get so many elements that this thing's made off its contrast and it's made off of its comparisons and how it's willing to experiment with mixes of different artists and sounds throughout.
Number 4, we've got Idols, Joy is an Act of Resistance.
Idols, I think in the review, I worded this wrong because after seeing them live, it became apparent what makes this band so special. It isn't their lyricism, it isn't their performance, because they're not reinventing the wheel here, being honest. This is my favorite record of the year. It's because the charisma of every single member that is in the group, whether it's Joe, who's the front man, or whether it's their bassist or their lead guitarist or their rhythm guitarist or their drummer. When I saw them live, there was such a cathartic mix of, what is the term, where you're with your friends and you sense that?
Camaraderie.
Yeah, there's such a cathartic mix of camaraderie on this entire album, but it's still keeping this political edge. It has the theatric elements. It's able to take changes throughout the entire album. The third act has this weird, for a punk album, it manages to cover an old soul song, Cry to Me. There's tracks on this where Joe's talking about having a stillborn child. There's tracks on this where super unifying, like Great and Danny Nadelko, where they're talking about immigration and problems with modern day politics and how people have a hard time adapting to change, and they will be willing to blame their problems and the problems in their life on other things. It's just a ridiculously catchy mix of punk, and it's completely passionate, and everyone brings charisma to the table in any form they can. There's so many great production moments on here, whether it's like Never Fight a Man with a Perm, where essentially it's just built off the guitar and it's built from there. It's not built off the percussion, it's built off the guitar. You have moments like I'm Scum where it feels like you're just in this rotating loop, wheel of sorts traveling down this hill with the percussion. It's very like wagon-esque in sorts. There's just so many great moments this album is able to take risk, and it's just fantastic. It's my personal favorite of the year, but for our list, it's number 4. I love this album dearly, and Idols are fantastic live, and this album even explained a lot of the problems I had with the layout in our initial review. I understand now because I think it's set up to be performed live. This album's made to be performed live.
Number 3, we've got Kids See Ghosts with their self-titled record, Kids See Ghosts.
Kids See Ghosts, the pairing of Kanye West and Kid Cudi. The dynamic duo provides something that at the time I view this as more as a Kanye album than a Kid Cudi album. Now I view this as more as a Kid Cudi album than a Kanye album, because it's built around kind of, while themes of Ye still apply, where Kanye's willing to accept himself, it's the same thing for Cudi, even more tenfold, because he hasn't really had a chance to speak out since getting out of rehab and having thoughts of having suicidal thoughts. He's able to like come back and go over so many themes of redemption and being reborn and being able to actually want to live again and be free. The themes of being free and being almost unattainable in sorts and being unable to be damaged appear again on here, because you have Ghost Town Part 2, which deals that a lot, which makes even more sense now because it takes this more like choir-like approach with Ty Dolla $igns. But you get moments where they're trying to push hip-hop even further, like Feel the Love, where it's just boundary pushing. It's just seeing how far it can push catchiness. But Cudi comes through more than just a hook man on this. And
he shows his worth as an actual rapper and singer and artist as a whole.
This thing's about redemption. It touches upon the cycle of violence at the end with Cudi montage. There's weird production mix-ups, whether it's sampling a Christmas song or it's sampling a Kurt Cobain demo tape. It's just willing to take production risks, and Cudi comes through with his most catchiest performances yet. Catchiest performances since Man on the Moon, and if not better than Man on the Moon. A more refined vocal palette, a more refined lyrical palette. Kanye's hitting his most fiery bars to date. Even though I think this is a more Cudi project now, Kyrie's Kanye is still delivering his most fiery verses. Moments like Fourth Dimension and moments like Cuddy Montage are some of the best written and laid out hip hop verses of 2018. It seems like they put a ridiculous amount of effort into something that wasn't made in a ridiculous amount of time. And also, this thing's super addictive, and I respect it even more now because of its length and the fact that it's so easy to digest. And the fact that it is 29 or only around like 28 minutes is what makes it so special, because it's easy to come back to, and it's able to get so many themes out in a short little amount of time, so you can even digest them even more after the fact and reflect on them even more after the fact, just building on these main points over and over again.
Finally, at number 2, we've got JPEGMAFIA's Veteran. Honestly, this whole year has been a toss-up between what is better, our number 1 pick or Veteran, and Veteran really took me by surprise because I'm not usually into like weird glitchy. Now this we described as post-trap. I'm not usually into like a lot of like weird glitchy experimental hip-hop.
Almost the abrasive, almost like industrial side of hip hop.
But JPEG hit it right on the head with a balance of catchiness and innovation and incredible lyricism that made this really accessible to me and made me want to return to it even more. You've got tracks like Real, where he's just showing his prowess in production and sampling just weird stuff. You've got this glitchy, like your computer just busted feel of Baby I'm Bleeding with some really hard-hitting bars that talks about anything from the Goof Troop to like
AJ Styles. It's just all over the
weird
place.
Stuff. You've got Thug Tears, which is JPEG just crooning over a beat made of Mortal Kombat sound effects strung together in full production.
It's like if Drake was over this beat, he kind of brings his Drake vocals to the table with the auto-tune, even makes reference to that on the track.
Yeah.
And you get moments like Rainbow Six, which is built off this like moan of sorts that just gives me the idea it's like someone was crying over like PlayStation Network.
Yeah.
And like he recorded this kid crying.
JPEG is so unapologetically himself on this record, and I love every second of it. I love that he's not trying to fit the mold of a rapper. He's not trying to be hard. He's not trying to be tough. He's not trying to be thug. He is just himself. And that just bleeds through everything that he's doing on this record. He's not afraid to experiment in like weird stuff. He's not afraid to talk about wrestling or Nintendo 64 or Macaulay Culkin or Whole Foods or Morrissey or why he's glad that NeoGaf is dead, but he's also not afraid to talk about like his background and where he came from, and the house he grew up in,
or politics. And I think one of the most political tracks of the year, I Can't Wait Till Fucking Morrissey Dies, where he talks about not only yearning for the death of Morrissey, who's been politically insensitive.
Morrissey sucks and the Smiths suck.
Ooh,
yeah.
But also making some of the best lines of the year with "Fuck a Johnny Rotten, I Want Little B," and how you don't have to accept older trends of music. You can just love the newer ones, and there's nothing wrong with liking Little B and not liking Johnny Rotten. Like, there's just so many political subjects covered through this entire record, and JPEGMAFIA just continues to be just throughout the entire thing just one of the most mind-fucking artists that I've ever heard. DD Form 2214, it's so like beautiful, but it's so like filthy and not code. It just feels like it's in the dirt, but it manages to somehow still be squeaky clean, which is weird. That weird dynamic. Even ending with like a sex phone operator line to this weird dynamic mode. It just, this thing's all over the place, and we can talk about it forever. I think it's best for you to experience it on your own. This thing is completely all over the place, but it's fantastic.
Which leads us to our number 1 pick of the year. Our top album of the year as a collective for 2018 was MC Paul Barman's Echo Chamber. We gave this sucker a glowing review, and I will continue to give you a glowing review as long as I live. This is an absolutely incredible album. Paul Barman is easily I think he's probably the oldest rapper on here. close to it, at least. He definitely shows his age.
Rapper, yeah.
Yeah, definitely shows his age. But he's also the smartest. Is
how old is he? Is he older or younger?
He's like 51.
Okay, then he's older. Kanye. Okay, Kanye's up there.
Yeah. Barman is easily the smartest on the list as well. But he delivers all of his lyrics in a not pretentious way. He's goofy but not stupid. He is, like I said, smart but not pretentious. He is free with his language but not just ridiculous in like what he's saying. He doesn't waste a word, but he definitely isn't scarce with them either. He's just an anomaly in the rap game. This rail thin, skinny white Jewish guy should not be the stereotypical rapper. Or he's not the stereotypical rapper, and he really, by all means of the definition of a rapper, shouldn't be a rapper, but he is, and he delivers some of the most heartfelt and left field content out in the rap game right now.
And not only that, the personnel that appears on this, MF Doom,
Mark Ronson, Questlove,
Grammy Award-winning writer and producer Mark Ronson, who samples Sleigh Ride. Sleigh Ride.
Yes.
Sleigh Ride
the Christmas song. No, Sleigh Ride. The Christmas song Sleigh Ride.
That's all he does. That's all he samples.
Yes.
We'll get into that later. But also
Prince Paul, Questlove. I think that's it.
that's the main ones. Open Mike Eagle.
Oh yeah, Open Mike Eagle's on here.
Ace.
But I mean, absolutely incredible. Paul Barman is touching on subjects that you never would have thought would have been touched upon. Like we mentioned, Mark Ronson samples the Christmas song Sleigh Ride for an old Jewish guy to talk about being Jewish at Christmas. He gives a full critique of the Ten Commandments, as well as making up his own two in a faith that he was raised in, where Moses came off of Mount Sinai with the two tablets and tells why each commandment is utter shit, while also interpolating a bit from a Sesame Street skit. He talks about Sun Tzu's The Art of War. He talks about having Tourette's syndrome. He talks about some made-up creature, hairy moth owl. He talks about how the life cycle works and how we evolved from monkeys in meat and bone.
That wasn't even like something that hit me with like its scale until listening to it the other day. Just like how long this track is and how long it dishes out. And like how from like in utero, so from a Nirvana, from in utero to like being just ashes of dust. And just being another part of the life cycle, this expands. Moments like the second track on this album, Young Man Speaks on Race, where his more immature personality comes out.
This is the same guy from Private Temple Hours.
Where he essentially talks about different shades of white and how some of them have at times have been viewed as taboo, like Italians were viewed as a close thing to black back in the day, and how none of it actually matters. And one of my favorite lines about this is Paul Barman, not only is he talking about race and critiquing race, but he's also admitting to the fact of, yeah, I don't do shit for the race wars. Like, I may be critiquing the song and talking about the various shades of white and how, like, throughout times of history, we've been characterizing each other on their skin when it really doesn't have any matter. But in the end, I don't really have anything to say on this, and I don't do anything to help it. Just kind of that humility in a sense of and almost humbleness and humility of sense of, yeah, I can talk about this and provide interesting points, but I can't do anything past that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really telling of the entire record, is that MC Paul Barman is extremely humble and down to earth while also being super awkward. He's not really charismatic, but he uses his language to the best of his ability to create some real, just really incredible poetry. And it's not often that I think rap can cross over into poetry. A lot of our like top 25 or at least top 15 picks in the hip hop realm have some crossover like that.
Like No Name.
Yeah, No Name or some JPEG cuts. Yeah. But in all honesty, I think that Paul Barman is just delivering some incredible poetic lyricism here, and using all of his talents to the best of his ability, even though he, by all means of the world, should not be a rapper. Yet he is. He defies every odd to become, I think, one of the most poignant hip-hop figures of the year that no one has heard about.
You may think he's pretentious, you may think he's strange and an oddity,
self-indulgent,
but you gotta give this thing a try, because it is one of the strangest hip-hop records and one of the strangest records in the year, and in our combined of terms, it is the best. It is outstanding, and my favorite hip-hop record this year.
Me too.
And we're going to cut it at that. This has been a long video, and I want to take out the earbuds because they're hurting my ears. I'm done. 2018's over, even though it's 2019. It's glad to finally have this year over. I still have to edit the shit, but I don't care. If you like hearing us ramble, we host a podcast every week on Apple Music, iTunes, and Spotify. Best of the show in audio form. Links down below in the description. Various social media in the description as well. And if you like us, subscribe. If you want to watch another video, our songs list will be on screen right now if you want to check that out. But until next time, guys, I'm very exhausted. Vincent Thomas Short.
I am Trevor.
And see you, boys.
Bye, everybody.